Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As Judy said, my name is John Owen. Excuse me. I have responsibility for sales and marketing at Col-Met. Today, we're going to be talking about curing solutions and other considerations. This is our facility in Rockwall, Texas. If you've never had an opportunity to visit, we certainly welcome you. We have an open door policy. We are located about an hour east of Dallas, 150,000 square foot facility. It's our corporate headquarters, and all of our manufacturing is done at this facility. When you look at the Col-Met business, we have three main business segments. We have our core catalog equipment. The batch ovens that we'll be talking about today fall in this category. We have engineered projects. These are larger projects that require engineering, maybe special booths. We'll talk about what we do here with regards to process ovens. And then we have our RP filtration products. Col-Met acquired the RP filtration brand in 2017, integrated into the business, and we're the only spray booth manufacturer that also manufactures spray booth filters, which allows us to offer a 5-year warranty for end users that use our filters in our booth. Overview of today's webinar, we're going to talk about the various curing solutions that Col-Met offers. We're focused mainly then on the batch ovens. We have two styles, and we'll talk about the differences. We'll look at the construction, the major components. We'll talk about how to size an oven. Then we'll do a feature comparison between the two ovens and kind of point in the right direction of which one might meet your end user's needs. Then we'll talk about information required for quotes, and then also talk about some competitive selling considerations or how we feel that we are positioned with regards to competitive units. So as far as the curing solutions, the focus again of this presentation is going to be our batch ovens. We have two main configurations, our standard BoBatch ovens and our VHD batch ovens. But in addition to that, we also make batch curing chambers. So the batch curing chambers are really used to accelerate the curing process, maybe of air dry or catalyzed materials, whereas with the batch ovens, we're actually curing the coatings. But we'll touch briefly on batch curing chambers just because it kind of rounds out this product offering. We have process ovens. Now, process ovens fall into our EP product family. These are typically used with automated or conveyorized systems, and the designs are site-specific. So if you have an opportunity for an automated system or a large process type oven, we'd certainly like to work on that with you. And then the other type of oven that we will build periodically is an electric batch oven. Here, instead of using natural gas or propane, we're using electricity. And again, these are designed based on site-specific or process-specific needs. Quick overview on batch ovens. We look at batch ovens as being used typically in low-volume manufacturing processes where the parts are, processed in a series of batches. Typically, if they want to increase the production rate, then they'll just add additional batch ovens, which we like because then we're selling more ovens. Parts can be transferred in a variety of ways, and it's important that we understand so we can help you in making the right recommendation. It could be manual. Maybe somebody just has a business doing motorcycle or bicycle frames, and they have a small oven. They manually hang it in there. As maybe they scale it up, have more parts, like you see in the picture, they have carts. So the parts are loaded on the carts, and the carts are wheeled into the oven. You could just have a regular concrete floor, or you could start putting tracks to guide the oven to make sure you don't hit the sidewalls. And then also there's options, or there's situations when an overhead crane or a rail is maybe used to manually pull parts in on a trolley in and out. And then the ovens are typically used to cure liquid or powder coatings, but sometimes they're also used to dry parts after they've been washed, or in some cases you might have powder where it's a two-coat process. They put on the first coat, take the powder and gel it to what they call the B stage, and do a second coat. And so a lot of times we also talk about a batch oven being used in a batch system. So a batch system consists of maybe a wash booth, a powder or liquid booth, and it can be configured in a variety of ways. Probably the simplest is going back to our bike or motorcycle frame. In that case, the customer may have a powder or liquid booth. They hand wipe the part, and then they coat it and then cure it. Maybe it's a bigger process, kind of like we have pictured, where there's an actual wash booth where they power wash the part. It's bigger, has a lot of crevices, so they want to dry it, so they put it in the oven at a lower temperature, dry it off, take it, powder coat it, and then bring it back and cure it at an elevated temperature. And so these can be configured in a wide variety of ways. So quite often we see a batch oven being used in a batch system, and we can certainly offer you solutions for wash booths, powder and liquid booths in addition to the oven. So our standard oven, or really the original legacy oven that Col-Met built, is our BoBatch Oven. This has an internal angle iron frame, gives it structure. Col-Met manufactures all of our own oven panels. They're completely assembled. They have a mineral wool type insulation in them. Standard thickness is 4 inches for the ovens. We have internal ductwork. Also, the ovens in standard configuration have single double entry doors, but we can also have pass-through ovens, whereas you have doors at each end that allows the part to move through it. Our ovens are designed to comply with OSHA and NFPA Class A requirements. A Class A requirement means that there could be volatiles in the air. So this will work for liquid or powder. Maximum temperature 450 degrees. And then Class A ovens also have to be designed with explosion relief. And we accomplish that with the doors and the bricks and latches that are on those. Just kind of an internal look at the BO series oven. Here you can see the internal ductwork. That ductwork has 8 slot nozzles, and so those are adjusted. One thing important to know is that when these ship, all the nozzles are closed. So if you try to start up an oven and the nozzles are closed, you're not going to get airflow. So you have to make sure that you open those up about 1.5 inches and then balance them after that so you can get initial airflow. Another important thing to notice is that we do have independent exhaust fan. We have a recirculation fan. Then not pictured here, well, actually the burner, and the burner also has a small combustion fan. Always important to make sure that you're getting clean air coming into the combustion area. If you're drawing in powder or a lot of dirt, you're going to damage the burner. It's going to get contaminated, and then it cascades into more complex problems from there. But this gives you a good overall view. A good thing to remember about the BO series oven is that the ductwork is in the side, and then the airflow moves through the sides up towards the top and then is recirculated through the oven. Now the VHD batch oven, the VHD stands for Vortex Heat Distribution. That was a question we had earlier. This is really, a lot of the features are similar, but really the main difference is that this oven, as a Generation 2 oven, was designed to have a smaller footprint and also to have a lower price point to make it more competitive with some of the units that are out there available online. Biggest difference is that it has overhead discharge ductwork, and the heater box is always floor mounted. With the BO series oven, I go back one side, the heater box can be mounted on top or on the back of the oven. So again, these are the main differences between the two. All the other design parameters are very similar, or I should say identical. Here's a cutaway, again, just giving you a better look at the discharge ductwork being in the ceiling of the oven. We also have our exhaust fan, which is a characteristic of all Class A type ovens that have to have an exhaust fan, again, because there's the possibility for having volatiles in the oven. One of the other differences with the VHD oven is that the burner box is not completely assembled. So when you receive it, the fan, the burner is mounted on a frame, and then you have to assemble the panels around it as you're constructing the oven. With the BO oven, the burner box is completely assembled and tested as one unit. Both ovens use our Smart Touch control panel, and this is really one of the big differentiators from competitive oven because this controller is far superior to it. So this is built to meet UL and ETL standards. It's a Nematell 12 enclosure, which means it's dust tight. It's PLC based with a touch screen interface, and then everything is menu driven. You can see across the top here. So it's very intuitive to kind of work through the oven as far as operating it, setting it up, maintaining it, setting up batches and such. You can also have 4 pre-programmed recipes for batches and then recall those. And then another really great feature is the troubleshooting. So an end user can typically resolve any issues they may have because in the maintenance screen, it takes you through the troubleshooting, and then it brings up actual pictures of the device and shows them the location of where it is on the oven so that they know what they're looking for and they know the parameters that it should be at. So whether they can resolve it themselves or they get on the phone with Ross, our technical support guy, typically this could be resolved without having to have somebody come out. Also, you have varying levels of password protection, and so you can limit access into some of the operating parameters. Maybe you don't want, you only have the operator looking at the front screen here where they can turn things on and off, but maintenance can get in there and go deeper to make changes. I mentioned the insulated oven panels. Col-Met manufactures in-house all of our own oven panels. These ship out completely assembled. They're 20-gauge aluminized steel, common width 6 to 34. We typically base the design of the oven around 26-inch design. That gives you an inch of flange on each end, so you have like a working length of 24 inches. They can be made from 6 to 180 inches long, depending on the type of the oven. And then the standard size is 4 inches, but we also can make them thicker. Say the oven was going to be outdoors where you had colder ambient conditions, and so you want a greater level of insulation. The edges around the perimeter of the panels are slotted. The reason they're slotted is that minimizes or reduces the heat transfer from the inside of the oven to the outside. So that makes it so that if you're running that oven at 450, you touch the outside, it's not going to be at an unbearable temperature. So again, big benefit of our panels is they ship pre-assembled. Here the top would be put on, then they get knuckle punched and put together. So when they ship out here in this vertical orientation, you just stand them up, slam them together, and start building the oven. When we talk about sizing an oven, the first thing you need to know is what's the maximum part size that you're going to be curing. And then our recommendation is that you add 1.5 to 2 foot of clearance around the sides and above the product. Also need to take into consideration about how the parts or the carts are going to be moved in and out and whether you might need additional space. But once that's understood, then you take a look. So I made up an example here where we have a cart that's 4 foot wide, 6 foot high, and 4 foot deep. Now, in this particular scenario, the customer wants to look at putting 2 carts in the oven at a time and have a 2 foot separation, which allows someone to get in there and back out and also have good airflow around the parts. And so if we look at that and we add our 2 foot around each side, looking at the width first, if we have 4, we had 2 on each, that's 8 foot wide. The height, we're already spaced on our cart 2 foot up, and the part is suspended then. So that's 6 foot, we had 2, it's 8 foot high. And then if we have 8 plus 2 in between, add another 2 on each end, that gives us a 14 foot depth. So that's the size oven that we're looking for. Now, one other thing to mention about these 2 oven designs, and kind of I line this picture below it. If you have a large part that doesn't have a lot of space or ability to move air around it, then you're better off selecting a batch oven because the discharge ductwork is on the sides and you can direct that air around it. Also, if this was a cabinet with an opening and you had powder or liquid paint in there that you wanted cured, you want to make sure that you've got good curing in there, you'd like to direct that warm air right into that cavity. And so a box or a cube or a cabinet would be best served with the batch oven. If you have parts that you have the ability to get a lot of air moving around, then the vortex with the top discharge would be a good choice. And so that's one of the deciding factors we look at. So continuing in our example, we said we need an 8 by 8 by 14 oven. If we look at our batch oven at first, we again have certain standard sizes. So that would be width, height, and depth. That would be this version right here. The SE stands for single entry. In this case, the S just represents that it's a standard, meaning that it's already pre-engineered. So one thing that you want to pay attention for, one, is we've got the height we need, but then we can also, for a single entry, we can see what the outside dimensions are. This allows you to see the size of the oven, the width, and the height to make sure it's going to fit into the location that you'd like to put it in. Now, one thing to note is you can see here that this has, the rear-mounted burner box because the depth is 19, almost 20 feet. If you look at a double entry, that means you have to move the burner box to the top. Now the depth is not as much. So sometimes looking at the various configurations, again, based on the space available, will lead you to a certain size or design. The other thing you can see here is that this oven is designed with a 1,000,000 BTU burner. Also shows you the gas requirements as far as cubic feet per hour needed, which is really important to make sure that the customer has the required pressure and volume of gas available. Another thing to look at is the gas train. So this has a 1.5-inch pipe inlet. So that would mean that you would want to have minimum of a 1.5 feed line of the gas coming in, or larger depending on the distance. So now if we continue the exercise and we look at the VHD, it's going to be batch oven, VHD style, 8x8x14, single entry. And again, you can see here the interior is the 8x8x14. One of the things about the VHD oven, and we say it has a smaller footprint, is you can see the doors come right out to the edge. And so if I only have an 8-foot width, you can see the overall width of the oven is just that extra 4 inches on each side based on the panel width of the insulated panels. And so typically the VHD offers you a narrower profile because you don't have the side ductwork like on the batch oven. But again, you can work through the chart, look at the BTU rating and the requirements, which is similar for both of these. Now, if we look at the two and just compare the features, again, when we talked about them individually earlier, we said there were many similar things, but again, just to highlight the differences, one has to do with the heater box location. Because the Vortex oven has the top discharge ductwork, we can't mount the heater box on the top. So it's always on the back, or it could be on the side if you have a pass-through. With the BoBatch oven, where we have the ductwork on the sides, the heater box can be on the top or the back. Again, we talked about the ductwork as a differentiator, and again, that's kind of the key, and that's one of the reasons why the VHD has a smaller footprint as well. Another difference would be if the customer wanted to have an overhead rail in the booth to bring parts in. That is only an option with the BO series. We don't do it on the VH because then it would obstruct the airflow at the top of the booth. So if you need an overhead rail, that's going to disqualify the VHD and point you in the direction of the BO oven. Again, the VHD was designed to be a more cost-effective solution, and so typically you might see maybe a 5 to 10% difference, lower price, depending on the size of the oven. When we look at the controls for the oven, both of them include the Smart Touch control. Options include the SmartConnect and the SmartBatch feature. The SmartConnect is always included, and then the SmartBatch is an option, and I will speak briefly to both of those in the coming slides. Another option or selection for both ovens are the doors. So the standard doors, as pictured here, is the solid double doors, but you also have options for sliding doors, bifold doors, pass-through doors like we talked about earlier, or kind of our premium door is our AutoSeal roll-up door, which is a metallized fabric. Other option is the floor. So you can either order an oven with no floor, you can have steel plate or an insulated. A floor is not required, but it is recommended just to protect the concrete and stop it from galling and thing and releasing dust over time. So just a little more details on the door. The biggest advantage of the AutoSeal door is the sealing. This door has patented seal technology on the side, so it seals extremely well. So basically the door rolls up so the top is sealed well. So really the only area that we have to worry about sealing is at the bottom. And it has kind of a self-leveling seal, so even if there's some irregularity in the floor, it's still going to seal, and there's a flap that pushes it down, and so the internal air movement also pushes that side of the floor. When you look at a traditional oven, you know, normally it's fine when it goes in brand new, assuming it's been installed properly, but over time you have the opportunity for air leakage. And you can see here in this picture taken with the thermal imaging camera, you do have leakage around all the doors. The other thing is when you open that door, you know, one, sometimes it's the weight of the doors with the operator, but two, you also get that surge of heat that's coming out, which isn't necessarily a good environment for the operator. And it also drops the temperature relatively rapidly in the oven. An advantage with the AutoSeal door is you can only raise it high enough to minimize heat loss, and then you basically get better rebound or ramp up. A couple of the other benefits are the reduced footprint. Some of the larger doors, these doors can get big, 4, 5, 6 foot. That takes up a lot of space, eats up a lot of aisle space. And so you can eliminate that by going with a fabric door. Another advantage is this door operates similar to your garage door at home. So you could use a remote or some type of a proximity switch or a pull chain, and that would allow a forklift driver to open the door without ever having to get off the forklift, and so you have better productivity. Typically what we see is because of the efficiencies in sealing, you get better heat ramp up, also the efficiency of not having to open and close manually. Most people that use this door will be able to process one additional batch a day. And when you look at that over the course of a year, there's a return on investment that we could help you work up for your customer if you have somebody interested. So this can be provided on new ovens, but it's also available for retrofit opportunities. I mentioned the SmartConnect. This is an oven app that is standard with all of our controllers starting January 1st this year. What the SmartConnect does is it allows the customer to view the operation of the oven and monitor it remotely from a smart device. Another feature that we include for 1 year with this is a subscription to receive emails or text notifications. And so what that can do is tell you that when the batch is complete or if there's any type of system fault. If after a year the customer doesn't like or doesn't see value in that subscription, they don't need to renew it, but they would still be able to remotely view the operation of the oven. They just wouldn't get the email and text. SmartBatch, again, is a new product that we released this year. This is actually something that we've applied for a patent for. It is an option. We look at it as an accessory. And basically what this does is this gives you an integrated data pack at about 2/3 the price of a data pack. So we upgrade the controls within the smart oven controller. And then inside the oven, you have a junction box that'll accept up to 4 thermocouple leads. Now, these have a magnetic attachment, a probe, with a 12-foot lead, and those can be attached to the part, or you could configure it where you could monitor air temperature. But you have 4 probes. You can identify the 4 probes by either location or maybe the part that they're on, and then you can set up one part to be the master probe. So our recommendation is that you would take that one master probe, put it on the largest mass of the part that you're trying to cure, and then you can set the oven and say, hey, when this probe sees 320 degrees, I want to run the oven for 15 minutes, and then I want to ramp it down, and I want to get a text notification that my part's done. So what it can do is it can save energy because you are just now running the batch long enough to get the part temperature that you want that gives you the proper cure for the proper amount of time. So again, it's like having an integrated data pack, but additionally, it can help drive the oven. When we look at the competitive selling situation, I'm kind of going back to the comparative chart that we did earlier between the two ovens. We talked about many similar features, but normally the first question we're going to ask you is when there's competition involved, is like, hey, are we comparing apples to apples? So the customer says, hey, I can buy this brand X powder oven online and it's $8,000 cheaper than what you're offering. So typically what we see is that we're not comparing apples with apples. We're looking more at apples and oranges. They're both ovens, but they're not the same. So one thing we mentioned is ours ovens always include an exhaust blower. Another important thing to compare is burner size. Many people can reduce the sell price of the oven by having a smaller burner. However, what that does is it causes you to have longer batch processing times and longer for the oven to ramp up. So that's a very critical item to look at. The other thing is what type of oven is it? Again, Col-Met ovens are type A, meaning that we can cure liquid, which could be volatile, or powder coating. Now, there's a little gray area, is a powder a VOC or not? It really might come down to the interpretation of the authority having jurisdiction. Even when you talk to or hear PCI talk, they're always careful to say that, hey, powders are virtually VOC free. So what's the right answer? So if you have a type A oven, you don't worry about it. If you have a type B oven and then you try to create liquid, you're definitely going to have a problem. Or again, it might come down to the interpretation of the AHJ. Another thing is that our oven panels, as I mentioned earlier, are completely pre-assembled. A lot of the internet ovens, you basically get a pallet full of sheet metal shells and you get a couple pallets of insulation, and the customer, depending on the size of the oven, spends 2 to 3 days building oven panels before they can even start putting the oven together. So, a savings of $5,000 to $7,000 can be quickly eaten up by downtime and additional labor to build that oven. So again, important to kind of look at these items. Another area where we always have an advantage is our controls. They're definitely far superior over our competitors. And again, we have recipes, batches, troubleshooting, alarms. And so again, it is a far superior control system. So that kind of covers our oven. That's a little bit of a way to differentiate it and understand if the customer is saying, hey, you're too expensive. Again, these are the items to zero in and focus on. I wanted to speak just a little bit more on the BackU Chamber. As we said, this is another product that we offer as a curing solution. It really is designed to accelerate the curing process. So typically, again, it's going to be used to speed up air dry or help with the kickover of two components. We see a lot of these sold into the wood industry. We have pretty much two versions, an insulated and a non-insulated, and that really just impacts the maximum temperature range as far as code compliance. The non-insulated can go up to 160 degrees discharge temperature. The insulated up to 180. Typically, we see these running 140 or lower. Again, we're just trying to speed up the curing process. The heat source is an air makeup unit, and we have 80% recirc, and so that helps save energy. The air is filtered. And another benefit of a BackU Chamber is, you can have a spray bake groove, but if you're baking, you're not spraying. So by having a standalone BackU Chamber, you can increase productivity and process more parts. You can see at the bottom, there's 3 standard sizes available. Quite often, these end up being custom units. So if you have an opportunity like that, please feel free to reach out. I touched earlier on process ovens. We're not going to talk about them in great detail. Just want to make you aware that we do manufacture these. We have a lot in the field. I showed the picture of the elevated oven earlier. You can also see some larger ones where we're manually moving. This is more of an inline batch process. But on the right-hand side is a system that was recently completed and installed in Mexico. This is a large system with many components for PJ trailer that included powder booths as well as dry off and large curing ovens for these trailer frames. So if you have an opportunity like that, we'd really like to work with you on it. The literature for everything I talked about is available on the website. So if you need that, please go there and download it. If you have trouble finding it, you can reach out to Judy and she will help navigate it or send it to you. And then the last thing to talk about really is request for quote. So if we don't have a standard oven configuration, or if you're not sure, or maybe it's a unique part, we can generate a specific quote for you, based off of our quote engine. So now we're just going to need a little more detail as far as the oven interior size, which we talked about. You would know what the maximum part size is at 1.5 or 2 around all areas. The powder or liquid, what's the required temperature for the oven. If you want us to do the heat transfer calculations to properly size the burner for a specific project, then we would want to know the substrate. Is it aluminum, cast, steel, or whatever, the weight, and then we can calculate what the heat rise would need to be. If you know whether you want a batch oven, the BO or the VHD, if not, we can help you make that selection. We need to know fuel source, natural gas, propane, or electric, voltage and a phase. We need to know the roof height, where it's going to be, so we can quote the proper amount of exhaust duct. And then need to know of any floor space limitations, so that might help steer us in a specific direction as well. Also, any options as far as single or dual entry doors, or roll-up door. If you want a floor in the oven, then the type of doors. Currently, we have kind of a promotion going where we're offering free startup, which is a $5,800 value. And so if you purchase an oven, you get it installed, we will send out a Col-Met technician to help start the oven up and train the end user on the system. at this point, I'd like to take any questions if there are any.
John, thank you very much for that good presentation. Before we get into the questions, which we do have some, I just wanted to mention as a reminder to everybody, before you log off, don't forget to download your handout. That is a copy of the presentation that John has put together here. It's in a PDF format, so please download that before you leave the webinar. Now we'll get to the questions. Question number one, John, do you have the ability to have a customer come to your plant and test curing their product before they purchase an oven?
We have done some testing in our facility. We actually have a batch system set up in our facility where we powder coat, and then we have a large batch oven. And we have done some testing. Again, our oven's very large, but yes, we could do testing as needed. We have the necessary equipment to evaluate part temperature and ramp up time and all that. So yes, we could do that.
All righty, thank you. Next question, does the roll-up door add any additional height to the oven?
That question is a good question. It really depends on where the burner box is located. At the top of that roll-up door, you need about 18 to 24 inches. So I would say it's not significant.
All righty, thank you. Again, on the AutoSeal door, it shows a motor on the outside. Is that EP?
EP, explosion proof. So typically the motor on the roll-up door would not need to be explosion proof because the oven doesn't necessarily have that rating. We can make it explosion proof if needed. There are options for that, but typically on an oven it does not need to be. We can locate it appropriately.
Here's another one on the AutoSeal door. I think it's for the AutoSeal door, John. How do you accommodate explosion relief?
So the AutoSeal door is a metallized fabric. The fabric is like they used to make foundry suits out of, so it's very flexible. The seals on the side are Velcro. And the way it works is there's actually 3 layers, and you end up with about a 2 to 3 inch air gap between the front and the back. But at the bottom of the door, actually what helps lower it is there's a pipe. And that pipe is weighted to help bring the door down. So we can provide that pipe with a breakaway feature. And so it would meet the requirements.
Okay, one more question on the AutoSeal door. I'm sorry, on the AutoSeal door, I'm sorry about that, John. One more question while we're on that subject is that they wanted to know, can that AutoSeal door be retrofitted to a competitive oven or just a Col-Met oven?
That's a great question. Yes, the AutoSeal door can be retrofitted to pretty much any oven. Typically what we need is a flat surface, about 12 inches on each side, about 18 inches at the top. If you don't have that available, it doesn't necessarily disqualify it. We just may need to fabricate a mounting surface that could then attach. So if you have a retrofit opportunity, the best thing to do would be to get a picture and then get us some dimensions, and then let's have a conversation. But typically, we could come up with a solution for a retrofit.
Okay. What are the physical differences between a Class A versus a Class B oven?
Again, so I don't profess to be an expert. Certainly, NFPA 86 dictates that. But as I understand, a Class A means that you could have VOC or hazardous VOC present. You could have VOC present within the oven. So, for instance, if you have a solvent-borne coating and that coating is, 50% solids, that means you have 50% volatiles, which is starting to leave that coating as soon as you spray it. So within the oven, you would have some VOCs that would be leaving. And so with the Class A oven, you have to have an exhaust fan, which ours does. A Class B oven is for non-hazardous or non-flammable materials. And so that's the primary difference. So a lot of times when you see a Class B oven, it does not need to have an exhaust blower. So that's one of the indicators, or one where you can tell the difference between the two.
All right. This question is now on the SmartBatch probes. Can calibration be performed on site, or does the customer have to send the controller in?
That's a great question. I would probably have to verify it, but I believe we can work with you to calibrate them on site.
Okay.
And then I'll need to verify that one.
One more thing back to the SmartBatch is you had mentioned in the presentation that they were magnetic probes. Is there anything for non-ferrous materials?
Yes, what we could do, and we know we need to be prepared for this. We're actually working on just have a clamp-on type probe for non-ferrous substrate. So yes, we can work with you on that.
I think that's all the questions, John. We'll give another minute here while we're waiting to see if there's any more questions. I just wanted to mention that the webinar, after we finish it, will be posted tomorrow to the Col-Met YouTube channel, and I'll have a slide coming up here in a minute that'll talk about that. But the next slide up here is the who to call list. This is just to acclimate yourself with the Col-Met sales team. If you'll notice there on the left side of it is the regional sales manager and their respective contact information. And then on the right hand of the slide is the map showing what territories they're responsible for. And then the next slide here, as I mentioned, the video would be posted to the Col-Met YouTube page. Here is the address here. And we've been posting all the videos at the end of every webinar. They've been posted there for training tools. And on the left-hand side, there is a picture of the Col-Met website homepage. As John mentioned earlier in the presentation, the request for quote is a good way to submit the information online anytime, day or night. And all you have to do is click that button that says quote request, and then you can submit the information on your oven, you know, the height with everything he mentioned there. So you can do that easily, and it goes directly into the inside sales team. The next slide here is the upcoming classes. Just to let you know, we have 2 more that are scheduled at this time, air makeup unit and then the marketing and sales tools. And then before we go, one more thing I wanted to mention is that about an hour or so after this webinar, you will be getting a short little survey. It's 2 simple questions just to let us know how we did or what we can do better for our next webinar. I don't think, John, no other questions came in, so thank you to everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate your attendance, and this will conclude our webinar.
Thank you.